All right, good evening. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the advisory board meeting on April 7th, 2025. I'd like to make a motion to begin the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right, if we could all join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing I'd just like to do is just mention that I appreciate everybody spending again, just reiterating what I had said last time, that I appreciate everybody spending the time that they did during the last two joint meetings. I thought that they were rather productive. We got through a lot. We didn't get through everything in as much detail that we needed to, but we definitely got through a lot, so I thought it was productive. Wanted to start off this evening with Article 11 from the annual town meeting. So it was one of a couple where we didn't have proponents present. The other big one was the two articles from the CPC, Community Preservation Committee. I did speak with Mr. Cantwell, Kevin Cantwell, who's the chair over there, and he will be present at our next advisory board meeting, which is next Thursday here in this chamber. So for today, I've asked the proponent for Article 11 to attend so that way we can have an opportunity to better understand it. See here, we got the right person, Nick?
I'm here.
Perfect. Come on up, Nick. And Nick, I apologize. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of your last name. So
Drosopolis.
Drosopolis. Thank you. Appreciate you being here tonight. So to bring everybody back into the article here. So currently in the Brant Rock district, there is a requirement for a certain amount of parking for residential units, as well as the requiring that they be located above the base flood elevation. So specifically, the paragraph in question from the zoning bylaws for the town of Marshfield reads that in the BRVO, 1.25 parking spaces for each bedroom in all residential units is required. Residential parking should be separate from the commercial parking area and should be sited to the sides or rear of the building. Commercial and residential parking shall be provided on site. It is required that residential parking be located above the base flood elevation. The proponent has proposed a new paragraph here, a revision, where it reads, in the BRVO, one parking space, so this is versus 1.25 as it presently appears, one parking space for each bedroom in all residential units is required. Residential parking should be separate from the commercial parking area and should be sited to the sides or rear of the building. Commercial and residential parking shall be provided on site. And it ends there. So the change, there's two specific changes here. One is that the proponent is advocating that the number of parking spaces for each bedroom in residential units moves from 1.25 to 1. And then the next change here is that it rids the develop or any obviously building from having to have residential parking located above the base flood elevation. And it gets rid of that requirement. So thank you very much for being here, sir. I appreciate it. We didn't have an opportunity to talk to you last week, and there was a bunch of questions that came up, and Mr. Guimond tried his best to tell us what he knew about the article and what you were proposing, but we thought maybe it would just make sense if you could just begin by telling us a little bit about how this came to be. You've obviously got this onto the warrant, and you're a proponent, you are the proponent. And just if you could give us a little bit of background and history, and then walk us through why you
Sure.
are advocating for this.
I don't know how many of you know, my brothers, starting with my father and my brothers, we've been in business down at Brant Rock for working on our 50th year with the Venus 2 restaurant. So we do have a lot of history down in the Brant Rock area. The Brant Rock sees a lot of action year-round down in the Brant Rock area. And, of course, during some of the winter storms, we see a lot of action as well. Over the years, we have purchased a lot of our boundary properties. So in doing so, we have created a nice project that we feel will start the revitalization of Brant Rock. Right now, it's a little dormant. We have a lot of vacant buildings due to some of these bylaws that are before us that we are trying to change. As opposed to the Article 11 that I proposed, during the town meeting, I'm going to amend and request and withdraw the request of changing the 1-to-1 ratio and just keeping the 1.25. So we will be just focusing on rescinding the requirement for residential parking to be located above FEMA base flood elevation.
How long have as you said, you've been a longtime member of the community. How long have you been in operation down there in Brant Rock area?
So the Venus itself, again, we're working on our 50th year. I myself run the Brant Rock Hop. I'll be going on to my 15th year. We now run the Rocky Roads, which is in another building down there, so my wife runs that. So we're working on, I believe, 5th or 6th year with Rocky Roads. We do have some vacant properties, vacant buildings on our property that we are aware of. But unfortunately, we cannot touch any of those because we'll lose a lot of our restrictions due to some of the bylaws.
And so you're bringing Article 11 to the town is being done in support of a specific project that you're working on, or is it
Correct.
General? Okay. Can
Yes.
you tell us a little bit about that project?
Well, my brothers and I have trying to revitalize the area down there by combining our properties. We'd like to do a new restaurant, a few new restaurants, add some retail space, and also some residential living. It's a pretty big project. It has required us a lot of time and thinking. And by doing so, we just feel like by changing this one bylaw will help us revitalize that area. We're trying to create some more parking spots down there. We know parking is very tight. It's a tight community down there, but a lovely community, so we've put our brains together and we're putting our best foot forward.
Can you describe the project generally to the board?
We are in the preliminary stages of our project, but we are proposing redoing the Venus, redoing the Hop, adding about 5 or 6 retail areas on the first floor. According to the bylaws, we have to, and then creating about anywhere between 80 and 90 1 to 2 bedroom residential living spaces.
You said 80 to 90.
80 to 90, yes, sir.
Wow, that's quite a bit. How does that compare to other housing developments down there in the Brant Rock? Would that place it among the biggest, or?
We have been told we are probably one of the second biggest lots, residential lots in the town. So with all the federal regulations, because we have to put everything above on a platform, so we cannot do anything on the ground according to the building itself. So raising the project is the biggest feat.
And what kind of residential units are these? Condos or apartments?
We're like I said, 1 to 2 bedroom residential units.
Okay, but no idea whether they're going to be leased or owned?
Rented.
Rented.
Rented, okay, got it. And how long have you been working on the project for?
This is going on 5, 6, probably about 7 years now. We've been working with a team of architects out of Rhode Island. And this has been something that we've been wanting to redevelop, obviously, down in Brant Rock, bring the energy back to Brant Rock, revitalize Brant Rock. Right now, as you can see, there's a lot of vacant buildings down there, and this is an opportunity that we would like to bring back to Marshfield. I think it's an area that needs to be focused on due to the lack of energy that's down there now. Obviously, the Arthur and Pat's building is pretty darn old right now, and that's something that we look forward to remove and start building.
So the project would go from where the Venus 2 currently is, all the way down to Arthur and Pat's?
Yeah, yes, we, abutting the old Haddad's driveway, we have a vacant building in between Venus and the Haddad's driveway. So that building itself, I think it's 287 Ocean Street,
Yes.
all the way to 239, which is Arthur and Pat's.
Okay. So all those buildings will come down? Venus
Yes.
2, right, your existing building will come down?
Yes, we have already met with historical, filed a demo permit for all those buildings to be demolished. We have met with the historical committee already. They have approved all but one building. They're trying to save the fish market, so we've allowed them some time to kind of get their resources together, and on our side, trying to help them find a spot for the fish market.
So you're parking 1.25 cars per bedroom, right? So you're going to have retail space, restaurants, and where is parking for those restaurants and businesses going to be located?
Right, so by raising our property, we propose to put all the parking underneath.
Underneath?
Underneath,
the
yes.
platform.
Underneath the platform, we're estimated to create 227 parking spots in the Merrick area.
That's for the residential units?
Residential and commercial and
So
retail.
So anybody will be able to park there?
That is
When you
correct.
go up. Will you have assigned parking for residents?
Yes.
Okay. How are you going to deal with the fact that that's in a flood zone and parking, it's also, I don't believe, because it's a barrier beach, I don't think you are supposed to have pavement on the ground level? I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's,
Yeah, we're currently working on that phase as well in regards to the barrier beach and the asphalt on the ground. But to mitigate some of that flooding down there, we're looking for car lifts. Some that you might see in a Boston area garage. Obviously, there's time to prepare for flooding. The town of Marshfield does a great job announcing to the public that there's an incoming storm with their LED signs. Obviously, that gives tenants or residents to prepare enough in time. So this way, we're looking forward to raising those cars, especially for the residents that are in these apartments.
And due to the parking, and it is a coastal dune barrier beach, and we have not yet spoken with conservation yet. We have not gone through that process. But, I mean, a lot of that area is paved already, including the Venus 2 parking lot's paved as well. It's a pretty significant part of the lot. And also that, during a storm, the town always cleans up any sediment that spreads over anywhere in that area. So, I mean, the Barrier Beach coastal dune areas, nothing's forming because everything is picked up after a storm, so.
so would you be required to have some type of breakaway panel underneath that part, underneath so the top of the, I guess, but from the bottom floor down, would you be required to have lattice or something?
Yeah, we're gonna do probably some nice shrubbery. I mean, in here, we're not gonna just be staring at a parking lot or a parking garage, if you will. There's gonna be some type of lattice work or shrubbery or
Right, that,
Some nice landscape.
Okay, so that, and then you'll have breakaway panels, but breakaway panels, so, okay. So that would be, like, in the event of a flood, I mean, you know what happens down there, I'm just trying to work through this.
Sure.
So you would have panels possibly, whatever you have on the ground, being cleaned up by the town? Is that what you're?
well, that would be our property. We would be
You
responsible
would
for
be
that.
responsible,
Yeah.
okay. And parking, would you, so the parking underneath, would you charge for parking for people that aren't residents of that? I mean, I'm just trying to, again, trying to get a picture of the whole.
I don't think charging for parking would probably be the smartest decision. We are residents of this town, so, we want people to come and enjoy the area for sure. Whatever retail goes in there, or get an ice cream, or spend a few hours at the restaurant. We are, propose to create 227, and with these lifts, if we, are able to get a lift for every one of those residents, that would create possibly another 80. So, we're talking 300 spaces potentially.
300 spaces, okay.
How many of those spaces get set aside for the residential use only? It's where they're assigned?
So we need 1.25, so if we get 80, anywhere between 80 and 90, it would require us to have 120.
So they're all one-bedroom units?
Right, so.
Majority of them, yes, the town has requested probably 5 to 10 two-bedrooms, but majority of them are one-bedroom.
Okay.
So every 4 bedrooms.
You need 5 parking spots.
So for every one bedroom, you've got 1.25 spaces, but you could potentially have 2 people living that need cars. So it doesn't seem like there's enough parking.
Well, I mean,
Well, we can't predict that. We could potentially have one resident that uses public transportation. that's the
Or
time.
Transportation from Brent Rock? Oh, you mean like Gatra bus?
The Gatra bus, or, yeah. Or
So-
Ubers. We have people that Uber from Brant Rock all the time.
But these are things that are unknown, right? And what happens if you get the project going and then you get to conservation, or, and you can't have a parking lot, you can't have pavement underneath the building? They say you can't do that. Now you're into the project, what happens then if you can't?
well, those are some of the answers that we're probably going to try to figure out prior to evolving on the project, but that's something our architects and engineers would have to figure out for sure.
So I'm just thinking that could be, all of those spaces could be out on the street. I mean, all of those people may have to park on the street if that doesn't.
We would like not to use the public parking. We would like to, use that as it is right now. But like I said, we're trying to create as many parking spots as possible.
I'm just trying to get an idea of the impact on parking. There's a lot of residents there, a lot of other businesses, and, I think it's great, the revitalization of Brant Rock. It would be helpful to Brant Rock, I think. I like what you're saying. I just feel that, the parking is a huge issue. Lifts, so in the event of a flood, mechanical, or, there's a lot of electrical components. How are you going to deal with that?
There's a lot of different styles of these lifts. We haven't really gone into all the details of exactly which lift, but we were told by people that have used them that some of these mechanics are on top. So any type of flooding that would come in obviously would not go anywhere near the electrical components of the lift.
So they'd be located somewhere on the top of
Yes,
the building?
yeah.
Like a boat lift.
I'm sorry?
Like a boat lift.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly, yeah. And we kind of, diving into this project, we knew that the number one topic for residents, for the town, is parking. Parking was just a gigantic issue. So we kind of did this backwards, said, what can we develop first in terms of parking, how many numbers, et cetera. So we kind of moved in that direction. This is 200 and some odd additional spaces, additional to what's even down there now, down at Brant Rock.
But 200 additional spaces, which the majority of them will be used for the residents of that building. So it's not going to add a whole lot of parking, realistically, to the Esplanade.
Adding to the Esplanade?
Yeah, it's not going to, you're going to have more, you're going to have businesses, restaurants, but you're not going to have a lot more parking available in the Esplanade from if what I'm hearing is, if I'm correct with the way that I'm doing my, you know,
Well,
you're talking.
there'll still be a significant amount of spaces left over, even when the parking spaces are full with the residents. Obviously, depending on the exact number of the apartments, but I mean, 200 parking spaces plus your residential parking spaces, there's still a significant amount for the retail and restaurants.
And plus, the restaurants itself, they're off hours with each other, so we have the breakfast and the full dinner restaurant, so, I mean, they overlap for like maybe 2 hours, so whatever's there for the breakfast in the morning will be gone by the time the restaurant opens in the mid-afternoon to late evening.
If the parking was a primary goal of the project, then why were you a proponent for actually starting with a lower amount of parking spaces than the bylaw requires currently? I mean, I realize that you're kind of going back now and saying, well, we're going to get rid of that request and push for, to leave it as just one, but if that was the case, then why didn't you come in with just leaving that particular area just left untouched?
That's a great question. Just to alleviate some of the stress the town has on allowing variances and stuff like that. A lot of families just have one car now, so a lot of surrounding towns have a 1-to-1 ratio. We're only one of two that have more than a 1-to-1 ratio, so we figured it would work a little bit better in our project, so we wouldn't have to ask for a variance for parking.
Yeah, but again, if you're concerned about the amount of parking that's available down in Brant Rock, why would you want it changed? It seems like I'm hearing two different messages. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm clear. The first message was that you're concerned about the amount of parking in Brant Rock. You said parking, 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 parking. Then now you're saying that, well, parking is important, but we're also thinking about variances and kind of the town-wide and whatnot. So what was really driving this?
Right. I mean, we were just focusing on our project.
So what would you have gotten out of your project by reducing the number of parking spaces from 1.25 to 1?
I mean,
It would just be a 1-to-1 ratio, so
Right.
the designated parking to the residential would only be 80 to 90 rather than 120.
correct.
I understand
So
that.
it would leave 30 more parking spaces open to the public,
Additional.
to the public.
So you were still going to build the same amount of parking spaces? So the number of parking spaces is not going to change?
It can't, that's what our lot allows, is
Right.
227.
This is the maximum amount.
Maximum amount.
227.
Oh, so that's the max?
Yeah.
Yes,
I was wondering how you got the 227.
yes,
That's a maximum number.
Yep,
yes.
And that's for both residential and the public use?
correct.
Yep.
And there's not much parking there to start with, right?
Currently?
Right now, there's not
No.
any spots at all, right?
No. Unfortunately, there is not.
So,
I mean,
So-
if not to be negative or anything like that, I mean, there are other businesses who just strictly use the public parking down there. Here we are, we're spending our time and a lot of effort into helping the town out and gathering and proposing 220 more spaces. And I feel like we've,
There are businesses down there that aren't utilizing their parking lot.
their own parking on their own lots.
0 parking spaces they're using.
How much parking do you have on the land that you own in its present state?
Currently?
Yeah.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I'm just thinking of the net additional parking compared to what there is today.
The net additional will be in the 100, over 100.
Over 150.
And that includes
Over
the
100.
residential.
I'm sorry?
That includes the residential.
Yes. Yep.
So the business, if you have 100 units and even if you were 1-to-1,
Mm-hmm.
you have 100 parking spaces.
We'll have 100 additional still.
did you say, so you said 80 units, right? 80 units is what? 80 to 90 units.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
So at the current level of 1.25, so you would have to allow 2 spaces for a 1-bedroom apartment according to that, right now, the way it's written, correct?
Not technically, no.
Not technically, no, it's 1.25.
It's 1.25, so you gotta think of it as every 4 bedrooms.
Right.
It's
There'd be an additional space.
So, yeah.
So,
So if these are one-bedroom units, and you have, 4 units, we need that fifth parking space.
so if you change the bylaw to one space,
But we're not changing that bylaw, sir. We're rescinding that bylaw.
We're not changing it.
We're amending that. We're
Oh,
keeping
you
it
are.
1.25.
Yes.
oh,
So,
The
so
question
so if
comes
you,
back
if you
down
get,
to is, if this is all about the floodplain.
did you see that?
If you weren't able
Yeah,
to
they said that.
change that, and the floodplain remains in place, what's that do to the complexity and the cost of the project if
These
everything has to be?
the elevated parking?
Yeah.
It's just,
It puts a severe financial restriction
well,
on
not
the
that, it just kills the project. I mean, we got to work on a square footage here of this whole entire lot. When you're talking about cars going up ramps,
Yeah,
it's, I don't even think that's even feasible at this
so without eliminating the floodplain parking, you think the project would be killed?
Correct.
Correct.
Yep.
That's why there has not been any development down there in probably 6, 7 years.
But all the permitting and whatnot still has to go through. This is all about whether or not
I mean, this is a
cars are allowed to park when it's flooding.
When
Yes.
regards to over 200 parking spaces, this solves a lot. I'm not saying it solves every single issue of parking down there, but it solves a pretty good amount down there.
what's your understanding of the reason for having the bylaw where there is a base flood elevation where the parking has to be above that?
That was amended at a town meeting about 4 or 5 years ago by a resident who had a grudge against us, who, at the time, I think we were fighting for mixed use down in that area. And I don't think he really thought it through because it applies to him as well. When the federal government's it's gonna require a lot of these residents to raise their housing down in that area. Because insurance rates are just gonna keep on going up and up and up unless you raise your business and/or residence.
So there was somebody that put this requirement in, advocated for this requirement,
Yes, sir.
Yes.
what you're saying in the past?
Yes, sir.
And they did it to try to harm you?
Well, I mean, speculation, but, speaking of the proper channels here in the town hall, striking that last sentence of this article would be ideal for, not just for this project, but for any future projects going down in Brent Rock.
And the federal government doesn't require parking to be elevated, it just requires buildings to be elevated.
But then you have the concern over if it floods, which it does, right? And if your cars are on the ground level,
Sure.
then you have to worry about what happens then, because now, if you don't have the the lifts, you could potentially,
Sure, so I mean, currently, right now, if there's no lifts down there and there's no elevated parking down there now, so just by warning, people have to move their cars, or the town's warning people with their signs out there, so currently, right now, it's just by warning.
But that was all before this bylaw came into effect, right? Where that might have been, those spaces might have been put in. So to take it one step further, if you go and you build this or anybody goes and builds a building down there and then they put parking at below the base flood elevation, we end up getting some sort of a major weather event, something substantial, and I'm a resident down there. I've gone and I've rented one of your apartments, and my car is now subject to potential flooding. Right? And there's nothing I can do except for driving my car to the other side of Marshfield and then, I don't know, trying to get a Uber via canoe back to my place or something. I mean, how does that, it strikes me that the bylaw is probably there also for protection of individual property, right, in terms of their vehicles.
Right, I mean, people are responsible for their own individual property, for sure.
Yeah, so, but if they choose.
I don't think we should be responsible for other people's property. I mean, we're all adults. I mean, people should be responsible for their own property.
But if you're the landlord, you're responsible for providing them a parking space that's able to keep their property safe from weather.
And I believe we will be providing that safety net, for sure.
And you're, go ahead.
no, I'm just thinking, but so you're providing that because of the lift, you mean?
Correct,
You have
yes.
the lift.
Correct. Which will put the car out of flooding.
So how high does that take that bottom level? I'm just thinking, if you have, I mean, so how far, like if you've got a lift in there, and that, how far up does that lift bring the car from the ground?
Again, based on the different types, we haven't really exactly picked out an exact lift, but it's a significant amount where another car could park underneath it.
Correct.
So it would take it out of to harm's way,
That is correct.
That is correct.
But the car there's now a car being parked underneath it. If the car's being parked underneath it now, is that
I was
car?
just giving an example of comparing how high the
Okay.
car goes.
Got it. So how many lifts are there? Is there just one? Is there multiple?
Well, our goal is to provide one for every resident. It depends on what the town allows us for our residential spacing. We would try to provide one for every.
All right, so if you had to provide
We'll just give
120 or whatever it is
80 to
residential,
120, sure.
you'd have lifts for every single one.
That
would
is
be
that is
the
our goal.
Depending on what is allowed in terms of the parking in the
But-
apartments.
Ultimately, the car would still be below the floodplain, though, even if it was lifted.
No, it will not. No.
How could that be? If you're under the floodplain, you
Oh,
build,
under the,
you're building in
yeah,
the basement, you're as high as the
Sure.
ceiling of the basement, which is still below the floodplain.
sure, technically, I think, I understand your question. Yeah, technically, you probably would, yeah.
No, the base,
Yeah, because you're talking if the lift is on grade, right, ground level, and you're lifting that car up, you're
It's
asking.
below ground level, it's in the basement. The lift is starting at the floor of the basement.
Yep.
And to the highest point is
Yep.
going to be below the first floor, which is at ground level, which is at the datum of sea level, right?
not technically, no,
No,
sir. I'm going to have
so-
to disagree with you, because the base flood elevation, obviously, so if anyone knows the Venus or the Hop right now, I'm at base flood elevation 11.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so the state, the federal government requires us to be base elevation 14 now, I believe.
I think it's 12 or 14.
I think it's Andrew said 14. So, which is only 3 feet higher than what my base floor is at the Hop. So anything above that would be out of,
Above the
Base
floodplain.
Yeah.
correct.
Have your engineers started down the road of traffic studies yet?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, no.
But that has been brought up, so yes, we have talked about it, for sure.
Who would operate the lifts?
Again, that's something that we're still working on as well.
Just
We
thinking
haven't
about
gone
whether
that
the
far.
resident can
Sure. Yeah.
get out
And there's
right
a lot of
away
lifts
when
down
they
there
need to. Yeah.
to operate, so.
Yeah.
I guess the thing I'm still struggling to figure out is the Article 11, I understand that you've proposed it in relation to your specific projects, but obviously this would impact any future projects across the town because it's changing the town's zoning bylaw. Still trying to understand the case for why it should be a universal town-wide change in the bylaw.
It's not a universal town, it's just for.
Well, I'm sorry, the Brant Rock.
It's just
my-
For the Brant Rock overlay
Right.
district,
Yeah.
correct, sir.
And I'm just still trying to understand why that's, you said that it's restricting development there in Brant Rock?
Well, I mean, we just had a residents' neighborhood meeting this past weekend, and a lot of their concern was aesthetics. If we build a MBTA-like garage, it would ruin a lot of the aesthetics down in that area. People will be looking at a garage rather than,
A big concern was, are they gonna be staring at a garage? Was a very big concern of the residents.
I was at that meeting, I think
Yep.
I spoke to both of you at that,
Mm-hmm.
or at least I spoke to you and another brother. I couldn't hear a lot because it was in the very back.
Sure.
Sherry, can you turn on your mic if it's
Oh,
on?
sure. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, I think the flooding and the parking seems to be the real hot button down there, and then the number of units and the size of that building. Is it one building? Because I could not hear. Is it
Yeah.
it's one building?
it's gonna be one building, correct?
Okay, and you're going to have your retail down on one end and the residential on the other end,
Correct.
correct? Okay. I guess, again, I'm going back to the parking. The other thing that's bothering me, and I don't think it's within the scope of this article, but is in the event of flooding and an emergency and getting people out of there. Again, traffic, have the police and fire weighed in on this? And I'm sorry, I love the idea of revitalization down there. I think it's great. I just think, we have to think about the impact something of this size has on the residents and on the other businesses, or on your own business, too. I couldn't park. I literally had to, go find a parking space, drove around a couple times, and finally got a spot because someone moved out of the end, which is fine, but that was Saturday afternoon, right? So, I guess it's just,
I respect your opinion, and I think people need to understand a lot of the onus and pressure is going on us to create and solve the whole parking situation down there. And people need to stop pointing the finger at other businesses down there who just strictly use the public parking for their business. Okay, so I think we need to start focusing a little bit of that attention on other businesses. We're trying to focus on what we have in our property here, and we've had a lot of informal meetings with a lot of different departments, including the fire and the police department, and they have given us great support in this project.
they have.
They have.
Yes. And emergency trucks are able to get behind and around this whole entire project.
How many stories? I'm just curious. How many stories?
We're going to build it within the bylaws of the town.
So, like
I think it's 35 feet.
35
around,
feet
yes.
from the base?
From the base elevation level, yeah.
So you're already at 6.5, something like that, right? The ground is, I think it's 6.5. So it would be a 6 plus 1, am I right? I think to meet, isn't it like 13 feet plus 1?
Yep.
Okay, and then, so you have 14 minus your 6.5 feet, so 7.5 feet, then another 35 feet, right?
Correct.
So you're talking about something that's 42?
Correct.
Okay.
I think you answered this before, so I apologize, but I didn't really fully understand your answer. What would you have to do in order to make the parking above the flood zone?
Well, it's,
It would be a significant project. If anyone's used any of MBTA parking garages, I take the train up at 128 all the time to go visit my daughter at school. So, I mean, those parking garages, you need ramps in and out, the turning radiuses in those.
the turning radius and the slope of these ramps it would make it extremely difficult to build this project, or any other project that's down in Bray Rock.
So if you're going to have
And a big
your
financial restraint.
200 parking spots, are they going to be how big is the area that they are going to take up?
In terms of square footage,
Yeah, describe it. Is it just a big rectangle that's only under the building and that's it?
Yes.
Or-
Yes.
So isn't it really just the building would have to be higher?
that would be, so yeah, I mean, if a big concern is the height of the building, then it
Right,
would be a
because
lot high, it would be a lot higher, yes.
you could start the parking on that higher level, make some, pretty things to cover up the concrete, and
Right, I mean, it would put a big restriction on the height variance, and then we'd have.
We'd have to go for a variance
I mean,
to,
that's where you have to start figuring out your budget and whether it's worth it.
no, I know it's expensive. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand what's
That's the
what's
conundrum we
involved.
have been in for many years. Like, we have been at this for 6 or 7 years, and we've looked at it at every situation possible, and this, unfortunately, just having grade parking is the only solution for development down there. Unless the town wants to lessen the height restrictions.
So that you would be higher?
correct.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, you have to go in that, because the whole building has to be above flood elevation. That's just a government law. So if you never, people don't build these things to not make money. It's a business. Those parking garages are a lot of money. It's a lot of structure involved in building those parking garages.
So again, probably out of the scope, but maybe a less number of units? Would you consider something like that? I mean, start out a little smaller? Again, I know it's probably outside the scope of this because we're talking about parking.
I think that is a little outside the scope, yes.
Okay.
We've had, as my brother said earlier the other day, late in the evening, in that meeting, we've had several people come up to us wanting to buy our property, and
We asked what their intentions were.
Right.
They said they want to throw as much apartments in there without any concern of the residents, any concern of the public. These are out-of-state people, don't know anything about the town. We've been born and raised, children been through the school systems, we've been through the school systems, we understand our residents, we understand the town. We want to beautify Brant Rock, and this is a wonderful opportunity to do so. And these other offers have no concern of that, and we did not want to bring that to Brant Rock.
What is the aesthetics? What is it, how does that, is it going to be, what type of a building? I'm just curious. Again, might be outside the scope, but I'm just thinking.
Sure. No, it is very important to us to keep the vernacular that's been down there, the Cape feel, the beach feel. That's very important to us.
It's not going to be a city-like building.
We don't want anything modern, for
Yeah.
sure. We want people to go down there and enjoy the views. We have beautiful views down there. We have beautiful sunrises. We have beautiful sunsets down there. It's a wonderful night on July 3rd. We want people to enjoy that.
If the town changes the zoning bylaw to get rid of the base flood elevation requirement, to your point that you just made in regards to out-of-state developers that are seeking to build up in that area, wouldn't that make it easier for them if you did that?
Would it make it easier for them?
Would it make it easier for them to be able to put together an investment case to justify larger buildings over there?
If what? If it was
If this base flood elevation requirement was
removed?
removed?
But the BRVO district is a very small district, so, they would, other than our property, they would have to purchase a lot of other properties down there to do it. We have a 120,000 square foot lot, so, is it possible? Sure, it's possible.
Yeah, of course.
Anything's possible.
Any other questions from the board?
Just a question, is there a requirement for any kind of affordable type housing, or is it?
I think the state wants 10%?
It's roughly about that, but we're still working with the state on that as well.
Okay.
Rick, is it appropriate? Could I ask a question of
Yeah,
Mr.
please.
Marsko?
Yep.
Do you have any information, Mike, about how the original article as written?
I don't, that would be something for the planning department on the town plan.
Thank you.
I can actually answer. The way the town had it was without that last sentence in the article. Again, it was one resident at a special town meeting that proposed that, and it got passed.
Was it an amendment on the floor?
Yes.
It was an amendment on the floor.
Yes.
Yeah, remember that. So it sounds like this project in total, without the parking being below the flood elevation, you had to put in garages at an elevation. It almost looks like it would knock off the top floor of a residential project, because you'd have to be up so high with a garage. Is that a fair statement? And if that was the case, you went from 3 to 2 floors of residential in order to get a parking garage up at the elevation. Is that kind of what you were looking at?
I think it's the height and width, because when you're talking about an elevated parking garage, I think the key word is the radius, and now you're shrinking it even more.
Oh, the turn radius
Yeah.
inside the garage versus
Correct.
the grade level?
Yes.
Okay.
And then just to continue with that, sir, there are setbacks as well on that top floor that zoning has as well, so, I
Yes,
mean,
the
we.
garage would have to meet the setbacks where the parking
Yeah.
lot.
Right.
Got it.
Oh, so the same applies for that top floor regardless of.
Regardless, we have setbacks on that top floor,
It's like
correct.
3/4 or something of this.
I don't know the
It's
specifics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So just to follow up, because slow on the uptake here. You are, 10% of these units are going to be in the 40B category?
We don't know what the exact number yet. We're still working with the state on
All right, but that is a goal to,
that. To bring in some affordable.
yeah, okay. The exact number you don't know yet.
We don't know the exact number.
But that is, okay, I understand, thank you.
And also too, the state of Massachusetts, I believe, is about 280,000 apartments short.
Residents.
Residents, excuse me.
Bedrooms.
Short in the state of Massachusetts.
280,000
280,000 short residents.
residential.
Yeah.
I think it's 284 to be exact, 284,000.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Appreciate you guys
Board?
coming.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
coming.
us.
Thank you.
Do we open this up?
No. Thank you.
That's it?
Yep.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks.
Will there be an advisory recommendation decided tonight, or will this be?
I don't know. How do we feel about this board just in terms of?
I think I'd like some discussion.
Yeah, I'd like some discussion too.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you
Are
very
we,
much.
are we, excuse me, I'm sorry, before we close this, minutes on this, are we allowed to be at that discussion, or is that a closed discussion?
No, it's an open discussion. We're going to we might have the discussion right now. But
Okay.
no, just saying you don't have to continue to sit there and answer questions from
gotcha.
us.
We appreciate that.
You can stick around, you can go, whatever you want. But we really appreciate it and appreciate your contributions to the town, most certainly. And
Thank you.
and appreciate you making time to come here and speak with us tonight.
Thank you
Very
very much.
helpful.
Would the board like a copy of the parking layout that we preliminarily have?
I love
Yeah,
engineering.
that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, sir.
You said the CPC articles will be discussed at the next Thursday meeting. Is that this coming Thursday, or what day?
That'd be next Thursday, the 17th. Right.
Would we like pass these in?
Sure.
But so we could look at it. That's great.
Take a photo of it.
Yeah.
Nick, do you guys have this online at all?
No.
I looked,
Okay, so I just
couldn't
wanted to
find
ask before I take a picture of it or whatever, so. Thanks.
We have, this is the Conservation Commission and myself, consultant to the Conservation Commission. We're here to discuss the $350,000, which is part of the article that you discuss next Thursday. We thought you were gonna do that tonight. We're here prepared to discuss that aspect of that article, if you would like to do it tonight.
Yeah, so next week will be the Conservation Preservation Committee, and you're with, or, no, Conservation, I'm going to mess the name up, sorry. There's two,
CPC is coming in next week,
yes,
but we're part of that article, but we have,
you have a separate one. Yes, no, and we will talk about that, yeah.
Tonight?
Yes, yes,
So
sir.
we should wait.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Mr. Finn.
How do we want to proceed with Article 11? Is there any more questions? Do we want to think about it and then come back at our next meeting and discuss it? What's your,
I think we have to have some kind
You-
of discussion about it. I just want to talk it through.
okay, I mean, if we're ready to discuss, this is the time to discuss it. This is obviously an open meeting, this is where we have our discussions, so, comments?
I'll start, I'm in
Yeah.
favor with taking that, I'm in favor of taking that parking requirement out. As I recall, I'm thinking back of that night, one person in the town created that amendment, and it just got followed through a little bit too quick, in my opinion. Although that was historical. On the project, yeah, it's a big project, but I think putting that requirement for parking, all over the country, you go down to Florida, you go down to Louisiana, there's a lot of developments that have the breakout panels, people have their cars under their homes in flood zones, and they have to get out of town or move when we have storms. And I'm just not a proponent of, let's just cut all development, because when the storm comes, we don't want these cars to get flooded. Now, there is environmental impact if they're flooded, gas tanks, batteries, so forth and so on. But we're not talking about thousands and thousands of people here. We're talking about under 100 people. And I didn't like the way that bylaw got put in either. So,
Thank you.
I'm
wanna go
curious
next?
as to how long that bylaw had been actually, was that the original, Mike, do you know? Had that bylaw been
A couple
in?
of town meetings ago, I think, that
Yeah.
they, at last minute
Right.
town meeting floor, they added that
Right,
sentence.
but how long had that sentence not been a part of, forever? Like, was that,
I think it's, but I'm not an expert, that's a great question for Greg Emor.
okay, all right, thank you.
Comments?
I do
Other
I
comments?
remember
Brian,
that.
any comments?
So basically, that's what we're talking about then, is just removing that. We're not talking about the scope of
Correct.
the project or
No,
anything
yeah,
else.
yeah,
We
no,
just-
that's right, yeah.
I mean, it's a tight area, so parking's always gonna be a challenge down there. This does add parking to, like they were saying, that there's businesses don't have their own parking for a lot of those places down there, so they just rely on that town-provided parking, so, yeah, I mean, I'm for the article. I don't see any requirement to changing the bylaw for that restriction. I think just makes the project feasible, so I'm for it.
Sherry?
I don't see any reason why that sentence has to be in that. I think that could be removed. I think that would probably benefit everybody down there.
Chair, can everybody speak into the mic, please?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me? Everybody, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure that I understand why that sentence was added. I remember, but I don't recall why that sentence was added. I just, the parking concerns me, I'm not going to lie, obviously I'm not. The parking concerns me for everybody. I would feel the same way about you guys in your buildings. Has nothing to do with you. I like the idea of revitalizing Grant Rock. I just think we need to be responsible, and not to suggest that you're not. Please don't think that. I just think we need to think this through. But as far as this sentence, I think I'm okay with removing that sentence and going back to the way that it was.
Ben?
Yeah, so we talked about a wide range of things that have nothing to do with the article. And as Sherry says, if we just truncate this down to, can we remove that? Can we recommend to the town that we can remove that without endangering the health and safety of the public? I see no problem with it. Now, will some cars be at risk? Do they have a contingency plan? That'll all be hashed out by other departments. And they've got a long road to go. They've got to go through conservation, they have to go through probably the Board of Appeals. I don't know, but we're not the end result here. This is their first, they have to clear this hurdle in order for the project to even go forward. So I don't see any inherent reason why not to approve this, or not to recommend approval.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn a little bit because the project itself I'm for. I mean, obviously, Paul makes a very good point. I've spent time in the South, in New Orleans and places where they're constantly having flooding. Florida is obviously has weather issues and things like that. And you don't just stop building things and stop improving things because of that. You make concessions, right? That's where you live, that's what you do. I am concerned because I believe this lift solution, there's just not a lot behind it right now. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, what I'm hearing is, we're considering it, we're not really sure how it's going to go, where it's very loose to me. And, I mean, if we say, yeah, I mean, we recommend that the townspeople say, okay, we can allow parking below, the floodplain, you're still going to have to be able to do it and do it safely. I mean, removing that, giving you the chance to do it,
doesn't seem like the problem. My concern is it's like a little bit putting the cart before the horse. There's no solution there. For me, when there's a problem, I like to see the viable solution presented and decide if that solution is going to be a good fit or not. So I'm kind of torn about it. I mean, I think at the end of the day, recommending that the town, that allow them to do it if they can come up with a viable solution, and I believe that would probably be more for town code, right, for building inspector and such. I mean, I've never seen lifts in a town the size of Marshfield, and the lifts I see in Boston are really so they can fit more cars in a smaller amount of space, right? Right, wouldn't you say that's true? Not really weather-related? So, I mean, if you could do it, more power to you, I just haven't seen it. I think if we allow that, we recommend, and the town decides that that's the way to go, I think I could be comfortable recommending that we strike that, especially, I was more concerned about the one space per apartment, and you guys are taking that away. So just being able to be able to do it, I think I would comfortably recommend, but the town would definitely have to step up and say, yeah, they would like to do that, and then you obviously would have to be able to build a viable solution there, so.
Thank you. Jan?
I think I agree with that. I was thinking a little bit about how they have a proposed solution, albeit that it's still in development, but would recommending this now mean that for other projects, they may not have the same integrity or whatever else to actually really try and come up with a solution, and whether we're opening that up or not. But if the building commission, planners, or whoever would require some sort of solution to keep the cars from flooding when there's a flood, I don't know if that would be true or not.
Can I ask a question real quick? Because I know I already spoke, but the planning board recommended not to approve as written, correct?
Correct.
That's what I heard. Did they not approve it because of the one per space, or did they not approve it because of the flood zone?
So they, can I answer that?
You can come up into you can just stand there at the mic if you want, or.
At the beginning, at the very beginning, when we were seeing the planning board, both of those concerns were in that one article. So the 1.25 plus striking that last sentence was in that particular article.
Right.
When they were in favor of striking the last sentence, however, they were opposed to the 1.25. So they still needed to make a decision on the actual article, thus being that they did not support it due to the 1.25.
Basically as written, the way it was written.
Yes, the way it is written now, with the 1-to-1 ratio, they were not in support of it.
But there is a chance that with the amendment that they would be in favor?
They would be in full support of it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And I just want to, since the minutes are still open, the building commissioner has given a lot of support behind this project as well. We have been dealing with him in a great deal.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
What's their view on, or what role would they have in terms of your lift solution, or are they requiring a solution? Flooding.
The people, all the informal meetings we have, they're like the idea of providing some sort of lift for the residents if they do not want to leave the residence during a storm.
Any other comments?
I think I recall the planning board saying.
I'm sorry?
I think I recall at our meeting the other night that he did agree with splitting it up, and that they would support taking that sentence out.
Taking that sentence out.
So I'll leave it my thoughts, and then maybe we can move to a vote. I don't have any comments on the projects that they're proposing, because that's not our role, right?
Right.
That's for others to decide. But what this does is this proposes a change to a bylaw that already exists and that was voted on, to my understanding, by town meeting and was already approved. So I appreciate the case that's being made that by doing this, that it would help support in a project that's seeking to take revitalization efforts down in the Brant Rock area, that's looking to make a contribution down there. But the thing that I'm having a really tough time with, I've just struggled for the last hour here, is that I just don't feel that the case was strongly made why this language needs to disappear. The town has taken a decision through town meeting to require that parking spaces have to be above the base flood elevation in this area. And I heard a lot about a lot of conceptual type plans, a lot of plans that are being looked at about, raising parking spaces and that's being considered, but a lot of unsure, how that would work. I also heard the concern that about developers coming in and trying to turn Brant Rock into some sort of like a resort that in brochures and whatnot, and you heard me earlier. To me, it seems like something like this actually lowers the bar for folks that are coming in and looking to validate investment projects that they're going to put in. So that's my issue with it, right? I'm always open to anything, just individually, just speaking obviously for me, but I'm always open to anything. I just don't feel that the case was especially strong, and so I'd have a hard time supporting something that would change what the town's already voted on, based upon what we heard tonight.
Are you allowing outside speakers?
No, ma'am. Any other comments from anybody else on the board?
No, I think we need to think about it a little bit before we go. I think maybe, you raised.
Speak up, please.
She's raised some, you raised some points that I just think we need to, I'd like to go back and think about that meeting and when that amendment was made on the floor,
Bad, very bad.
I don't know. I just.
So it doesn't sound like you
torn.
want to vote on it.
I'm torn. I don't see it. I don't see it. I hear what you're saying, because I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I am considering the fact that, it was taken out and it had been that way for a long time. So, I don't know. I just saw no information.
Sorry. Is this requirement, the parking above the flood zone, only in this one area of town?
Yes.
Yeah,
Because there are at least some other areas of town that are prone to flooding, that have commercial and residential spaces.
Do we need more time to think about it? And do a vote next Thursday, or?
We can vote and at town meetings say we voted, 3-3, 4-2.
No, I understand that. We don't have, I'm not looking for a unanimous decision here. I'm just looking around at you all to see, is people feeling like they can make a vote tonight, or do we need more time? So Vin?
Almost.
Okay, all right. I'll make a motion to move Article 11 as a recommendation from the Town of Marshfield Advisory Board to town meeting. I'll make the motion to approve Article 11. All of those in favor of approving Article 11, or recommending Article 11 be passed by town meeting. All those in favor say aye.
I think we got a
Oh, go
preference that it's, the article's being amended to just for parking.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Yep, we should. As we understand, it would be amended from, back from 1 to 1.25, but still eliminating the base flood elevation requirement.
So are we recommending that it be allowed to be voted upon at town meeting, or that we actually would suggest that people vote yes?
Support it.
Yeah, so, well, if you vote, obviously, if you vote in support of it, right? So I'm moving to make a motion that we, if you're in support of it, then yes, you're saying that we think that it should move forward with that change from 1 back to 1.25. If you vote against it, then it means you're making a recommendation to the town not to vote in support of Article 11.
I'm not comfortable voting right now.
Or they would vote, but we're recommending they don't vote for it. They would vote against it. It's still a legal article according to town council, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, so it will be brought to town meeting.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the vote will happen, but we
Yeah.
are recommending to the town not to vote in the favor of
In
it.
favor of it.
Correct.
Right. Or to vote in favor of it, however,
Correct.
which way, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to clarify.
Sure. Okay.
They would. Go ahead and restate the vote, because I think some confusing language.
Sorry about
We
that.
are voting to either approve the amended article to eliminate the parking requirement above the floodplain.
Right. So what I would do is, what I'm going to do is move that the advisory board take a vote on our recommendation to the town to vote in favor of Article 11. All those in favor of moving forward, or do I have a second on the vote? I'm sorry, on moving to a vote? Okay. All those in favor of Article 12 Article 11 as written with the modification of changing it from 1 to 1.25 parking spaces, say aye.
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 So can you raise your hand? The ayes? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 4. And all those against say nay, nay. Okay, so 6 to 1. Okay.
Chair, can I have a comment on that? Are you voting on the amendment or are you voting on the actual article itself, the way it's written?
We're voting on our opinion to make a recommendation to town meeting for Article 11 as it's written, but we modified it to say that we're voting, or what the board just voted on, what the board just voted on was to recommend passage of Article 11 with the modification that instead of it being 1 parking space per each bedroom in all residential units, that it's changed back to 1.25.
I mean, I think you're making it more complicated, in my opinion, by doing that. I think you should just vote up and down what the article is without the supposed amendment that they're going to rescind it potentially. But you're either for the 1.0 or you're not for it, and just leave it at that.
You may,
So we're amending, so aren't we amending the article?
Mr. Kelly makes a very good point, because
Okay.
it's an article that's being brought as written, and even though the Drosopoulos brothers want to make an amendment, and they have made that clear, he is correct that they could say they decide not to make that amendment, and, and it would go as written. Ultimately, town meeting, it could get voted down on town meeting floor, and then somebody could make an amendment to it and have it revote, or make the amendment before the vote. You gentlemen could make that amendment. Our recommendation, the problem is we wouldn't have time to recommend it unless the amendment was made prior to our last advisory board meeting. So I don't know, I don't know the protocol on that.
So
Oh,
can
if we have to vote on just the way it's written,
Right,
then that's a whole different vote.
correct.
Do we have to vote on it the way that it is written?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
What's in the book?
Okay, then that's different than
Okay.
what we're talking about.
All right.
And that's different than what
Yeah,
we
we
just
should
did.
have asked.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
That's on us.
Yes.
All right, so let's, I move to vote in favor of Article 11 as written. All those in favor say aye. All those against? Opposed?
No.
Hands in the air, please. Thank you, all right.
Because otherwise it's 1.
Okay. 7 against, okay.
So is there a possibility that this could be amended before town meeting, or does that amendment have to take place on the floor?
It would go on the floor.
Okay.
Right, Mike? Correct, Roscoe?
I would think I would check with, that's a town council.
That's correct. He's not here tonight. But from my experience, I would say that's what happens.
Town council says it has to be amended.
Right. Okay.
I already spoke to them.
Okay.
So when that gets amended on the floor, how does that work with the advisory board support on that?
So I assume you're going to call for an amendment before there's a vote.
The advisory board wouldn't be able to make a vote.
Right.
We would,
I mean, I guess the evidence is our first vote that we did.
our vote at this point is as it's written to not be in favor, and then it's up to the town whether or not to vote that up or down. We're simply making a recommendation to the town. And if somebody chooses to make an amendment on the floor and to get, to solicit support for that, then obviously they can do it, but there's no requirement that the advisory board take a vote on that prior to an amendment going forward. And I apologize for any confusion that I created for thinking that we could make a recommendation as we do the budget, because when we do the budget process, we can actually recommend a different number than what's in the budget process. But during the warrants here, it's, thank you, Mr. Maresco, for your clarification, we cannot.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
One thing, though, this is a public meeting, this is being recorded, everyone can see what we talked about and what we voted, when we thought we could vote with the amendment, so there is that. I mean, it wouldn't be the official vote of the advisory board, but that should be somewhat of a positive. Correct? Correct.
Yeah.
I just have one question too. So if the project will be 227 spaces regardless?
It's not regardless, no, it's, I mean, you still have the structural, columns that need to be placed in there.
All
But-
depends where the structure falls, I mean, give or take 15 spaces.
Should they come to the mic?
Yes, please, can you come to the mic real briefly?
The question was, the 227 spaces guaranteed. That is not correct because we don't know exactly where the structure is going to lie on the column. So one structure could lie in one parking spot, so it could take away a parking spot. But the civil engineer roughly said probably give or take away 15 parking spaces if a column. It might not fall in a parking space, it might. We don't know that, we're not that far.
So if you take away the 15 then, so that brings you down to 212, right?
That's correct.
Okay, would you, regardless of, because you're not sure of the one-bedroom versus two-bedroom, how many, you thinking 4 to 5?
The town had recommended an informal anywhere between 5.
Okay, so I guess what I want to get at is that you.
That was just a recommend. We don't necessarily have to have 2 bedrooms.
Okay, but would you
That was
have
a recommendation.
212 parking spots if you have those 2 bedrooms, or whether or not you have those 2-bedroom units? Because I'm thinking that, I don't know many families that don't have 2 cars for 2 people. And sometimes, there probably won't be many families if it's a 1-bedroom, but I'm just thinking the more parking, better for everybody. That's just what I'm.
Listen, our goal is to create as much parking space as possible. If we can fit it, we will fit it. Trust us. That's our goal. I mean, we know, we've been down here 50 years. We know it's tight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to Article 12, since we do have some folks that have been waiting very, very patiently from the Conservation Commission, so appreciate you being here. On Article 12 specifically, there's a line item here that, all of these line items, all 8 of them in Article 12, were submitted by the Community Preservation Committee. This is Article 12 from the special town meeting warrant. But specifically, there's one of them that was submitted jointly with the Conservation Commission, so I was hoping the Conservation Commission would have a few minutes to talk with us about it. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, it's good to be on the other side of the table for a change. I'm Craig Hannafin, I'm Conservation Commission Chair. And this is William Finn, who is a consultant to the Conservation Commission and is currently the individual managing the Veterans Park dam removal for us. So I'm going to let him speak. He is the expert on this figure and why we need it.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how
This
much
is
time,
item 7, right? It's just we're all on the same
Yes.
page.
Yes, that's right, yep.
I'm not sure how much time you want to spend this evening, but I did prepare a handout
Thank you.
that I will go through, if you can stand the time.
Yes.
There's a series of photographs and plans that are pertinent to the discussion, particularly if I give you background information, which you probably need to understand the request for the $350,000.
Thank you.
So, I hope it works.
Thank you.
I assume when I prepared for this evening that you, the advisory board would need some background on the whole project to be able to put the $350,000 request in context.
Thank you, that'd be wonderful.
So what you see in front of you, the first picture, is two plans. The first plan on the left is the existing conditions prior to the start of the project. And the plan on the right is the finished product, if you will, after the project is finished. And the difference is, the objective of the project is twofold. The first objective of the project is to remove the dam on the South River, which is now gone because the project is under construction. The dam is gone, and the purpose of taking the dam out is to improve migration of anadromous fish up the river so that they can increase the spawning ground habitat that they have. That river has been blocked for decades, and we believe that it's beneficial to increase the spawning grounds for several different species of fish up that river. So the purpose of removing the dam was to enhance that spawning habitat. The second part of it was to improve the features of the Veterans Memorial Park. Veterans Memorial Park has been in need of maintenance and repair throughout its extent for many, many years. And I'll get into that as we go forward with this discussion this evening. So there's two purposes associated with the project in general. The project has been around for approximately 10 years. And we've been trying to get money to do the project. Recently, in the past 2 years, we were successful. The town, let's say about 4 or 5 years ago, initiated the design and permitting of the project. That was funded by CPC to the tune of $250,000. That covered the design of the project and also the permitting for the project, which was quite extensive. That process was completed in November of 2024. So in June of 2024, I believe, we received a $1 million grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. At the same time, we received a $262,000 grant from the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. During that time frame of 2024, at the same time, the town applied to the state of Massachusetts to the Commonwealth to get a grant for $650,000 to complete what we thought was the budget for construction of this project. We were denied that grant. We submitted it at the day after town meeting ended last year, when the MBTA zoning issue came up. And at the town meeting, it was explained to people that there was likely going to be a restriction on grant applications to communities that did not comply. I made that plain that we were submitting the grant the next day, and I thought we might not get it as a result of that restriction. I can't say that that was the reason we were denied, but common sense says that it had something to do with it. So we did not get that $650,000. The $650,000 was a contingency fund, made up our contingency fund for unforeseen circumstances, subsurface conditions that we didn't plan on. And it was based on the engineer's estimate at the time of what the construction costs would be. We put the project out to bid, and we got in 4 different bids. We got one bid in that basically bid $1,600,000 to construct the whole project. That was about $1 million less than the next lowest bid. So it was very surprising and very pleasing that we got that kind of a bid in, and that's who the contractor is that's doing the project now. The funding at that point in time, and still exists today, we had the money to accommodate that contract. We could build a project in its entirety for that amount of money. We had that money, but we had no contingency. If you broke down the budget, and I've done that for the select board and the CPC, we had $14,000 more than the exact number required by the contractor to build the project out. We had no contingency, basically. So going into a project like this, you don't want to go into a project like this with no contingency, because you're going to run into unforeseen circumstances no matter what you do. So we requested of CPC, because there was no sense in going back to the state. They weren't going to give us any more money, and we just received a no in May. We went to CPC and said, okay, we applied for a $650,000 contingency to the state based on a much higher expected contract price. That contract price came in much lower, fortunately, so we're asking for a much lower contingency. So we asked for approximately half that amount of money from CPC. And they have granted that. We had a couple of meetings with them, and they said they voted in favor of granting us the $350,000 contingency. As with other CPC funds, whatever is not used as part of the project is returned to CPC. We just don't use it. So it may not be $350,000 that we need, but that's what we asked for. That's what we felt is a decent contingency. Now, if you go to the second picture, we can start to talk about some of the things that have changed since the project bid was awarded. And you see the dark blue, the medium blue, and the light blue line that runs through what was at one point in time and will be again the lagoon at the project on the Veterans Park. That is the contractor's idea that allowed us to save the $1 million and do this project all at one time, assuming that this solution would get relief for us from the Division of Marine Fisheries regarding time of year restrictions. And I can go into that if you will, if you want to later. But what it did do was take that blue line that you see there and create a channel. It's called a bypass channel. What we've done is bypass the river. And the fish now, which will be coming next week probably, will be able to bypass the old river channel while we work on it and migrate upstream to spawning grounds. And what that looks like is the construction of that was an extra, a cost extra. The next picture shows you what that looks like under construction, while it was under construction. It's a lined channel. It's a geotextile liner with that rock being lining the bottom and sides of the channel, and that channel runs from the Route 3A bridge that you cross all the way up past the dam and up past Situate Chair, if you will, on the river. And it's now, you take the next picture, it's constructed, it's operational, and the next picture shows you what it looks like when it's full. So the fish now, for the first time in a century, are going to be able to migrate past the dam, which no longer exists, and go up this bypass channel. This is a temporary solution. While we are now able, because the Division of Marine Fisheries has approved this, we are now able to work throughout the whole winter on the channel that is dry. So we can do a lot of dry work in the channel, make all of the improvements to the original channel, which is a series of weirs and riffles and pools which allow the fish to go up the channel without fish ladders. So it's going to be a natural-like channel. But this will stay in operation, this bypass channel will stay in operation until all that work is complete. But the key is that by creating this channel, this bypass channel, we were able to convince the Division of Marine Fisheries to not require us to stop work in February, at the end of February, and not begin work again until September. So there was a series of stops and starts with the time of year restrictions that this channel eliminated because it allowed the fish to bypass now all year. Now, the next picture you see is the beginning of some of the unforeseen circumstances, change orders that will, that just examples of the change orders that we've run into so far. The first one you see there is a foundation. That foundation was run into when we constructed this bypass channel. That's the foundation of an old mill that was on this site, an old grist mill on the site of the Veterans Park. That's the foundation. We hit the corner of that foundation. That was an addition to the old mill. It does not have any historic significance, so we had to take it out so we could get the bypass channel in. But it did not have any, we had the Historic Commission check it out, and it's not historically significant, so we were able to remove it, but it cost extra money. So that's one of the examples. The second example that you see is a tree. That tree, the day we signed the contract, that tree fell into the river.
Of course.
And it cost us $5,000 as an extra, unforeseen. We didn't know the tree was going to fall in the river, but it did the day we signed the contract. So that's $5,000 plus to remove the tree out of the river. So that's one of the things we went into. The next picture you see, if you orient it like this, you see the roots down here in the corner, the right-hand corner of the picture. That's the channel where the old, where the water wheel used to roll around, where the water wheel used to spin, that's the bypass, that's the channel for that water wheel. And you can see underneath there that it's all undermined and rotten. No one knew that until we got the river drained and you could see the wall. And now we now understand that we have to replace that whole channel. And it was not part of the original design or specifications that we had to do that. It's cost extra. And the next picture is the other side of that same channel, the river side of that same channel. You can see that's all undercut by the currents over the years. So that wall all has to be replaced, and the floor of that channel has to be replaced. Those are just examples of what we have run into when it comes to cost extras, the unforeseen circumstances. So we are requesting that thus far, the change orders have totaled, the change orders that have been approved total $20,525.51. Those are pending. The change orders that have been approved are $48,325.53. So there's total to date for change orders, $68,850.71. So we're already in the hole, minus the $14,000 we had going in. So, and we're only 41% into the job. And we still have the whole Veterans Park, still have the river to finish, and the whole Veterans Park to rehab, and all of the brick walls and everything that are abutting the river all have to be repointed and chinked, and there's a whole lot of masonry work that has to go on. So we're anticipating that we're going to see more cost extras. And that's the reason for the $350,000 request. I can go over the budget that we have right now, but basically, at the end of the day, including the $350,000, if we used it all, from the inception of design to the completion of the job, it would amount to a 50-50 split, basically. The town would pay 50% of the cost, and our grant monies would pay 50% of the cost, which is a pretty good deal, given today's environment. So I'm answering questions if you have any.
So what is the let's go, if we could go high level for a second, total cost of the project?
Total cost of the project is about 600 and, wait a minute, I'll tell you.
1.6 million?
It's, no, the total cost at this point in time is $1,911,000.
With the 350 contingency?
No, without the 350 contingency. With the 300, you would add that to the 350 contingency.
In the $1.9 million budget, was there already any contingency built in?
I'm sorry? No.
No.
No. We did not. That 1.911 million is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, $1 million. The North and South Rivers Watershed Association, $261,000, and the town of Marshfield free cash at the annual town meeting of $650,000. That's the $1,911,000.
Okay, so 1.3 million in grants, 650,000 from the town.
650,000 from the town,
From the town.
from free cash at
Free
town
cash.
meeting last year.
Okay.
And that was when we were anticipating, the next day, we submitted the $650,000 grant request to the state, which was denied.
Did they say why it was denied?
No. They said they had a lot of competitive bids. This was our second time around, and we thought we submitted a very competitive.
But publicly, we could not say that.
Pardon me?
That grant, we don't know why it was denied. It
That's
may or may
correct.
have
We
been
do not.
through
Right.
ETA,
We
but
do
we
not.
can't say that, okay.
We do not. And I won't speculate about it.
So there's the 250 originally plus the 1.6, is that the bid that you received? I'm just trying, you're saying that you have 1911,
Right.
but the total cost of the project would be, like, your anticipated total cost? I mean, that's the money that you have, but the,
No,
got one
the money
point-
we have right now, we can cover that 1.911.
cover the 1.9.
Plus, we have $14,000.
Okay, but you said earlier that 1.6 was the bid that you chose? That was the,
That's correct.
and there was a $250,000 5 years ago, or roughly. So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure, 1.6, where is that 1.9?
Well, what you're not understanding, well, not understanding, I haven't told you. You have the $1,896,735, which is $14,000, they're about short of $1,911,000, is Flynn Enterprises, $1,612,000 for construction. Fuss and O'Neill engineering costs of $150,000 for engineering services during the construction process, which is our engineer review. And there are several functions that they perform during the construction process. There's Carmine Bruno, who is our resident on the project, who's the caretaker for the Veterans Park, and he's serving as our resident on the project, is $40,000. Finn Associates, my fee is $19,000. The Woods Hole Group, which is another consulting firm doing the environmental permitting assistance in the project, is $46,000. Those numbers run up to $1,896,735. That's, and then if you add 14 onto that, that gives us the complete budget.
Okay.
So there's more to it than just the contractor, but we're asking the $350,000 primarily for contractual issues that we don't foresee. But there'll also be some additional engineering and consulting services as well that are also anticipated as a result of the unforeseen circumstances. We have to have an engineer review those things.
So additional to what we just went over, there's additional?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, but it's all contained in that $350,000.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think we're going to use the $350,000, but it's a number.
Question for the accountant folks. What did we hear was the CPC funds that are available for these type of things? What's their bank account at right now?
You mean for the 3 different allocations as well?
I don't understand the question.
There was the 7 million
It's
and
like 7
change.
million and change, right?
Yeah, that's the number I was.
Just for the undesignated, yeah.
Yes, 7 million, okay. And that's where the 350,000 would come out of?
That's where it's, yeah, that's what it's stated right there.
Okay, thank you.
7,740,000.
Thank you.
Other questions?
What sort of what does contracting issues mean? Like interpretation of the contract? Or just the costs of building and,
Unknowns.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, maybe I got a bum mic. I'm just, when you say contracting issues, are you talking about contractual misunderstandings or just the physical work okay.
Construction glitches.
If I said contractual issues, I meant construction issues.
I think you said.
They're just for construction purposes,
Thank you.
yes. But if you run into, for example, the undermined sluiceway for the water wheel that I showed you the pictures of, the contractor, what happens is, the contractor says, okay, it's gonna take me X amount of dollars and X amount of labor to finish this, to fix that project. That all gets put together in a plan and reviewed by the engineer. The engineer charges for that purpose, so we have to pay the contractor to do the work, but we have to pay the engineer to evaluate it and make a recommendation to the town as to whether or not we should pay what the engineer is charging. What the contractor is charging. So there's engineering services involved in these change orders as well.
So if the 350,000 is not authorized,
Yeah.
what's the downside?
We
Where-
owe
where-
the
where does that
contractor
leave?
money that we'll have to take out of free cash.
And if it is authorized, you anticipate that the project will finish smoothly without any further?
That's what I am anticipating. I'm not promising, I'm anticipating.
I don't mean to put words in your mouth.
No, I
think that's
understand.
what
I'm
meant.
only kidding you.
Just one quick question on the bypass. So you created the bypass so you could continue the construction. What happens once construction complete? What do you do with the area that was
Okay,
bypass?
what happens, if you look at that plan, that bypass runs right through the heart-shaped lagoon. That bypass gets repaired, returned to a lawn, the lagoon gets rebuilt and lined with a clay liner, the fountain gets put back in, and a functioning fountain gets put in there, and the entrance from the South River, which feeds the lagoon water, gets replaced. So everything goes back to a well-repaired, maintainable Veterans Park. So that's about $950,000 worth of the cost of the whole project, is to repair and maintain and upgrade the Veterans Park.
Thank you.
So if I was to summarize, then the project was about 1.9 million. Contingency usually runs about 20% on most of our capital projects, which is around 350. You anticipated hopefully getting a grant for the contingency. Now that that's been denied, we either have to go to free cash or go to our kitty of $7 million to pull it.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very much
you.
for being here. We appreciate it.
Pictures are always appreciated.
I think we have to vote. I'm sorry?
Are you open for comments?
Sure.
Yeah, he's part of it.
Oh, unless he's part of it.
He's part
Well,
of
my name is Bert O'Donnell. I'm Vice Chair of the Conservation Commission. and I'm
Oh,
also-
well, then yes, you
Also the
can.
Conservation Commission representative to CPC.
Okay.
So I think Mr. Finn has given you a very good explanation about where. Mr. Finn has given you a good explanation on where he's at with this project. As far as your further questions with CPC, I was just going to make a suggestion. There's a Community Preservation Act Coalition. You can go online and take a look at that, and that gives you a very good overview of all the requirements of Community Preservation Act, which it sounds like there was a lot of unfamiliarity with that at your previous meeting. I watched it on. I watched your meeting, and a lot of the public comments, I think, were based on misunderstandings. So if that might help you get prepared, and then we can discuss that at the next meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much again. Appreciate it. So as this is strictly one line item out of this article, I don't think there's any, I think we got to wait till we get to the rest of the visit Mr. Cantwell, or Mr. Cantwell will come visit us at the next meeting on Thursday, the 17th, and we can talk through the remainder of these items. We're coming up on the hour here on 9 PM. Let me go all the way back to the beginning. Is there any particular articles that any board members want to bring up in terms of follow-up questions or discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we anticipating having the school superintendent or the school committee represented and talking to us about special town meeting article, I forget what number this is, Article 6?
Free cash article?
Yes.
We can invite them to come speak to it.
I'd like to, I think that one's going to be a town meeting discussion of a large order.
So we can invite Tom Miller from the school district to come and speak with us.
And where are we looking?
Article 6 from special town meeting, it's the free cash article.
Yeah. So
And-
here's my worry. Typically, the school budget, and probably everyone knows this, but I'll say it anyway. Typically, the school budget is voted on as a lump, and there's a reason for that, because we don't, I don't know if it's a state law or if it's Marshfield, but we don't want people picking apart the town, the school budget with amendments. So we just say, here's the budget, yes or no, town meeting, and that's the advantage the school has. What this article does is it exposes them to amendments from the floor saying, I'm in favor of everything, but anything that has to do with Chromebooks I don't want. Or what is this $900,000 for the schools? And the fight that could ensue would be devastating to the school budget, as I understand from what the accountant department told us last week, that without this article, their budget in the regular town meeting is very low compared to what they need. That's my worry.
Okay, well, we can certainly invite Mr. Miller from the school district to come and answer questions at the next meeting. And so long as the schedule's open, he's usually pretty good about that.
I just want to hear what's their contingency?
Sure. Other articles?
Yeah, I did, while we have a panel over here, could you give me the nuts and bolts of Articles 18 and 19? I've heard too many different things from too many different people, and I'm confused.
This is Articles 18 and 19 from special town meeting warrant.
Yes.
This is the Article 18, $70,000 for transfer $70,000 from April 2022 annual town meeting and $5,000 from the special town meeting in 2022, and apply those funds to pay for the October 16th special town meeting, Article 8, new Chevy truck, looks like.
So I'd just like to
Yeah,
start back to square one, because, give it to me again, please.
Sure thing. As we discussed it, what had spurred this is that there were deficits in a couple of accounts. So you had those the first two parts of that, Article 4 for the 184 utility with plow article. At the April 2022 annual town meeting, $70,000 was appropriated for that purpose. Those funds were never used. And then there was another appropriation, October 2022, and that was spent, but there was a balance of the $5,245.72.
So this is money that wasn't spent.
It was not, well, one article was not spent at all, and then another
That
was
was the
not.
confusion, Michael, between you and Sean that I was hearing, so I wanted to get it clear. So the money hasn't been spent, it was sitting in the accounts,
Yes,
and
Just in the wrong.
the money that was spent was taken out of the wrong account.
correct.
Okay, so this is surplus that was in the accounts that are going to be put into the right chart of account.
Correct, because town meeting can vote for any purpose. So in order, like, if you have two articles that have balances, the only way that you could use them would be to have town meeting reappropriate the funds.
So we'll reappropriate this amount that's in surplus from a few years ago into another charter account and then be spent on this.
Correct.
So not to beat the dead horse, but the Chevy K2500 was approved at town meeting to be purchased.
Correct.
But unfortunately, the $70,000 was line item to the wrong vehicle, or wrong item, right?
No, I don't think that that's, I would need the DPW here to provide the entire details, but it's not that it was appropriated to the wrong account.
Funds were taken from the incorrect account to pay the invoice for vehicle 185. So, okay. It is confusing because it looks
So
like.
confused.
It's confusing. And I'm,
So Meg, give me the skinny on that first sentence of 70,000 appropriated from April to 2022.
Yes.
What was that $70,000?
It was originally for vehicle number 184, utility with plow.
Okay, so did we buy Article?
No.
184, we didn't buy it at all. All right, so that 70,000 was for that plow, okay. And then the 5,245?
Shoot. That was an article, it was part, the purpose of the article was for, again, vehicle number 184, utility truck, and that was partially spent, but after all the expenditures went through, there was a balance of $5,245.72.
So for that one truck, $75,245 was left over.
Yes.
And that money was appropriated to pay for the Chevy K2 2500?
Correct.
So the 75 was left, is that what you just said? The 75 was left and it paid for?
Can't hear you.
The 75 paid for the Chevy?
The Chevy 2500, and that was paid for and purchased.
That's vehicle 185?
The Chevy K2500, the number 180, vehicle 185, yes. But there was insufficient funds.
And it was, okay. And that 75,000 was taken from the wrong account.
It was just taken from an account that just was never spent.
Say again?
It was taken from an account that was never spent. It was never drawn down.
But it was the wrong, how did it become the wrong account, I guess? I'm confused.
I can explain the mechanics of the accounting part of it as to how this happened. That's going to have to be DPW. That's going to have to explain that.
Maybe I'm making more of this than I should.
No.
So we had 75,000 left over, we used it to buy a Chevy.
Yeah. So you
I
had
guess what I'm confused is
75,000.
why is it has to be a warrant? Because we just paid it out of the wrong.
Because you can't, because when you went to the April 2022 town meeting, you voted it specifically for vehicle 184. And then in October 22, you voted it explicitly for vehicle 184. To use the funds for vehicle 185, town meeting needs to revote it, because if you voted it for a specific purpose, to use it for a different purpose requires town meeting to agree to that.
And we did that in '23, October '23. We repurposed that money to the Chevy.
So is there so there's two truck, wait a minute, so we paid, so it's just $75,000 that's left. Okay.
Yes.
It was two separate articles. Voted on, two separate articles.
I mean,
Right.
18,
22 and
still a little-
23.
I just don't know how to explain this to the town.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull up the balances.
I mean, this is money that was going on 2 and 3 years ago, and
I mean, I think if you want an explanation of what's happening with the specific vehicles, it might be worthwhile to check in with DPW on that.
Sean,
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm still confused, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what to ask now.
No worries.
Paul, you want DPW to come talk to us?
I can call Sean and ask him. It's just, I'm just confused over money that appropriated and reappropriated over the last 4 or 5 town meetings, and here we are now in 2025 doing it again, and it doesn't,
So one
it just doesn't
truck,
flow very well.
funding for one truck was approved in 1 year, right? And then the money, it was taken from the wrong fund. But then it, go ahead, Meg. Thank you. I can see you.
So when truck number 185 was delivered, it was paid for, but that balance right now is in a deficit. So this would restore or move those funds from what was allocated for number 184 utility with a plow. That would actually cover the deficit for the truck, the K2500 number 185.
Okay,
That's what's happened. So this is actually covering that deficit because through the process of them coding or posting the payments for those vehicles, somehow they picked the wrong org object code.
okay,
That's what happened.
okay.
All right, so that simplifies it.
Yes,
185 was purchased with the wrong account.
Correct.
The money was sitting in the other accounts, now we just want,
Correct. So that it's really no cost. It's just at this point reappropriating those funds from where there's a surplus to where we currently have a deficit.
That makes
so
sense.
pretty much the same thing happened with 19 articles.
That is correct.
And this has to go to a town vote.
Yeah, that's the thing,
correct.
doesn't it suggest a
that's not like a-
different explanation? But if the town's going to vote on it with this explanation, they're not going to understand. Whereas if you talk about one being in a deficit
Yeah.
and transferring to fill the deficit.
It's pretty
yeah.
simple. It's pretty simple.
I'm-
The money was there, they wrote a check out of the wrong account.
But I'm just agreeing that the explanation doesn't,
But the explanation for Article 18, the DPW is looking to correct an error where funds were taken from the incorrect account to pay the invoice for vehicle 185. This will restore the funds to the correct account. So that's exactly what happened in this case.
So there's the explanation that we need right there, Paul.
Yeah, and because it was a warrant, that's why it has to be voted on current.
Correct.
I mean, to me, it was just a,
So we're putting a lot of energy into this. What are the actions to prevent recurrence over at DPW? Is someone coaching them on how to get their line items correct?
They do have access to Munis, so they can see what their chart of accounts are. So really, I think it's just making sure that they have their list of accounts when they're ready to go, and making sure that they're using the correct account numbers. Yeah.
We're going to spend a lot of the town's time trying to explain this, not only to ourselves, but
Correct.
well, it kind of comes down to the Munis implementation not going so smooth in the training of the people in Munis. But we don't need to bring that up enough. Okay, I'm done, thank you.
Any other articles anybody wants to bring up? I have a couple myself. Mr. Maresco, Article 5, the solar, was there, so when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, there was an expectation of about $20,000 a year from a potential lease that could happen, and the source of that information is about 5 years old. Has there been any other studies that have been done in terms of what other potential?
Oh, so if town meeting is interested in that, that would have to be rebid. When we rebid that, then hopefully, based on the economic climate, what the cost, what the utility is willing to give us, that would be all spelled out when we go out to bid.
Right, no, and I understand that. I understand that that number's an old number, so you'd have to go back to the procurement process. My question is, has there been any study in terms of what other uses could be made of that land versus, I mean, so obviously one potential use is leasing it to a solar port, carport provider. Has there been any looks at other potential uses, or is this the only one?
This is the only one. So one of the things with the dog park, when the dog park was created, was that you have to have some shade. The problem is in that area, all the trees were down, so it worked great on the creation. And the town did receive significant amount of money from the Stanton Foundation, and then there was money from the CPC to create the dog park. So they were looking for some type of, last year and again this year, they'll put up tents. Last year, they rented them. This year, they're looking into purchasing some of those, it looks like a tent piece. They put up these telephone poles, and then they attach the canvas to the poles because it gets really hot when there's no shade out there. Not only hot for the dogs, but also hot for the individual owners of the dogs. So the utility company at that time, when they were working on the cap landfill and stuff like that, said, well, you could potentially have carports there. When they put the carports in the police station, they said, well, you could have a carport used as shading. A lot of people put them in. If you go to the fairgrounds has carports out back to, and it does provide a nice shade. The police station, it keeps the rain and the snow off of the vehicles also.
Okay, thank you. I also had a question on the budget article from annual town meeting. It's Article 3. So when we met last time and we were talking through this budget article, it was brought up or brought forward that there was an issue where there was a funding for the South Shore Vocational Tech that was not included in here. If that's not included in here, but it is a fiscal year 2026 expenditure that we can't avoid, doesn't that mean that the budget is not currently in balance? I mean, as submitted to the advisory board, obviously last month, was it last? Yeah, last month. It was in balance, but if we assume, because we were told at the last meeting that we have no way of skirting that obligation, that we're gonna have to pay that one way or the other, and that's not included in here, doesn't that create an imbalance in the budget by the 6 or 7 or 800,000, whatever it was?
Well, look, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I just want to sort of go through the whole process. So, based on feedback, it appears that there is a belief that funding for the South Shore Regional Technical was overlooked during the budget process. It was never overlooked. The issue is that the $710,000 assessment isn't the full extent of the cost tied to the South Shore Regional membership. Enrollment is expected to increase significantly over the next few years. We provided a handout this evening. We need to find a way to accommodate this. The plan was to fund with free cash so we could have the time to address the larger picture. We had a long-term plan for operational costs, and capital costs would be addressed through the debt exclusion. When you looked at the whole picture, it totals to $750,273. It was the cost for the 32 children that go there, and then the cost that we have to contribute to the stabilization. I have information back up on the town's website from the South Shore Regional Technical Vocational School that showed that question had passed by more than a majority. Town voted again to support it in the January 25th, 2025. Because of these two votes, we as a community own the subsequent cost for the yearly operation and for the debt services of the new high school, whether the debt exclusion passes or not. Our first order of business was to come to agreement with the schools on a necessary funding level that was agreed to by all sides on the day that the warrant went to print. When we were discussing the budget issues with the schools, they did not want to discuss the South Shore Regional Vocational Technical School. I would say they wanted to discuss treating it as a shared cost, but this was not resolved, and this is one of the things that we need to resolve. We're not assigning any blame. It's just a bigger discussion. The financial team and I knew then that we need to fund the operational costs from free cash in the fall at the fall special town meeting. For the FY27 budget cycle, we will need an override to cover the ever-increasing operational budget for the South Shore Regional Vocational Technical High School for potentially another $750,000 because they have 32 kids in line to go there, bringing our cost to approximately $1.5 million. I did speak to Tom Hickey earlier this afternoon regarding what happens if we don't pay our first installment. He said there is nothing in the agreement other than expectation of a quarterly payment from the town. I did tell him it would be our expectation to send the payment following the special town meeting in October, which would put the town back on track with the second payment then due in December.
And we just got this handout here. Could you just walk us through? I mean, there's a lot of information here. Could Meg, that was you who asked about what are we looking at here? So I can make sure I understand.
So Sean, these handouts, they came from, what was the source information for these?
So on the first page, this is just a rough estimate of the cost per pupil. So the cost per pupil is a tentative number based off of the DESI. So DESI has a calculation, and it kind of arrives at what is the rough or the affordability that Marshfield residents can pay per pupil. So taking a look at that per pupil cost, knowing that there's going to be some increases that South Shore Tech is going to inherently look at, because the cost per pupil takes into account Marshfield's ability per DESI, as well as any of their operational costs that may be incurred. So anticipating there being an increase year over year, and looking at the enrollment, for the first year, which was 2025, we had an enrollment of 3 students, roughly $19,591 per pupil, because the per pupil count is so low. That was roughly $58,774. Then we look at the per pupil cost with a higher enrollment, which drops the per pupil cost down to $18,694, which brings us to at the time, a rough estimate of $710,372. So the proposed budget from South Shore Regional Votech was $710,373. So the rough estimate wasn't that far off. And in addition to that is the stabilization payments that the town needs to make towards the stabilization fund. So the total estimated expenses was projected at $749,590.10. We now know that it's roughly $750,327. So this just details specifically what the potential cost would be associated with just enrollment. This does not take into account either level debt or level principal payments for the actual construction of the high school. This is just for enrollment.
Okay.
On the second page, this is just information, and I think this is just a communication from Thomas Hickey, kind of giving an estimate about the short-term borrowing versus 3.25 for the band for the construction versus 3.75 for the fixed financing for the bond going out for 30 years. And this is cost projection. So on one side, you're going to see level debt payments. And what level debt means is that your payments are going to be fixed for the entire 30-year term versus level principal, where you're paying a little bit more in interest and principal, but that number does go down as you start to go through the life of the note itself. And on the last column, it's giving you an average or estimated household projection. Now, South Shore Regional based their projections off of figures that I thought were a little bit low at the time. So what I had on the page that has DLS on the top, where it says Data Analytics and Resource Bureau, I had given an estimate as to what I thought the impact would be on a tax bill. So this has to do with the $2.5 million override for the enrollment costs. So this is what it would cost, roughly about 30 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. So the average home in the town of Marshfield, if we were to consider an override to pay for the enrollment costs, again, this is not the debt exclusion, this is the enrollment costs, it would cost approximately 30 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. So the average home in the town of Marshfield is $758,800. So the increased cost for that override would be $227.64 for the year.
This estimate on what an override would cost to the town on an individual property basis based upon assessed value of properties, this is based off 2.5 million, right?
It's based off 2.5 million. So if in fact...
Is this 2.5 million, does that include any of the debt service to pay for the school, or this is simply just for the additional students that are going to the SSVT?
That's a great question. This is just for enrollment and operational costs. This does not cover any of the debt. The debt is a debt exclusion, so at the end of the project and the debt is paid off, that exclusion falls off the tax bill.
But this would stay on?
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, leading up to this point, all these years, so Marshfield's been sending kids, and it's been funded through the school budget. In this fiscal year that we're in right now, it's always been funded in the school budget, so people go and look and try to see where it is. It isn't listed out because, as a new member mentioned, there's only the one line item for the school, and that was all part of the Ed Reform Act, but we've had some internal discussion that we probably want to start to break that out now that we're going to have a larger contribution we're going to have an operational cost for the South Shore Regional Technical Vocational and a stabilization cost for that. And then when the building's built, we'll be assessed what our share of the actual capital costs are for the new high school.
And then the last page, you're going to see it says debt service calculator. This is to take what the anticipated portion of Marshfield is going to be responsible for South Shore Regional VOTEC. Now, keep in mind this number is probably going to change because the town of Pembroke, I understand, is also joined. So this figure should come down. So we're estimating that Marshfield's share of the construction of the new South Shore Regional VOTEC High School is going to be $26,713,500. I'm factoring that it's probably going to be about 4% as the borrowing rate. So if you look down below, if for level debt service, the debt service payment or what would be on top of the tax levy would be $1,544,844. But if we look at level principal, the first year would be $1,958,990. But if you notice, with level principal, we're paying less in interest, whereas with level debt service, we're actually paying more in interest. But this is a decision that unfortunately Marshfield can make. This is what collectively the member communities are going to have to decide as far as whether or not it's going to be level debt or level principal.
So in total, between the debt service that will pay for the school, the new school, right, to get it built, that we pay through 2058-ish, 2057, 2058, which looks like it's either 133 per year if it's level, or it goes from 168 and then drops over time. And then for the additional enrollments, if we assume that the average cost of a home is, if I remember our conversation from a month ago, $750,000. So the estimated tax bill impact is $225. So the total impact between the debt and between debt service and operating costs is about $358,000 a year or so, if we were to use the 133. 133 plus 225. So 358 a year, right? Am I looking at that correctly?
$358 per home?
Per year, yeah, per home, yeah. Right?
So for the average home,
If you assume that the average home is 750,000, I realize that
Yeah.
it fluctuates, yeah.
so if you look at it from a different perspective, if I was a homeowner, I want to know what the cost would be per 1,000. So for level debt, you're looking at approximately 19 cents per 1,000. For the override, it's 30 cents per 1,000. So if I was looking at the other scenario where we're looking at level principal, the first year would be 24 cents per 1,000, and then 30 cents per 1,000 for the override, so roughly 54 cents per 1,000. So depending on the value of the home, so if it's 758,000, I don't have a calculator handy with me, but you're probably looking about $360 to $380 additional per year.
And is this, so going back to what Mr. Maresco is saying, it sounds like, if I heard correctly, what you're going to be proposing in the fall is an override for the operating costs? Or is it an override for the operating costs and the future debt, or two separate overrides, or how does that work?
It would be one override. An override would be forever, and that would cover the cost of the students. We anticipate with another school joining, that means that there would potentially be less seats available. The school in totality has 900 seats, the new high school. Right now, Marshfield has like 32 and potentially another 32. If that scenario continued, that would bring us up to about $2.5 million in school costs, and then our contribution to stabilization. So when we joined, we had a little under $400,000 worth of stabilization, and they allow you to pay that in 10 yearly installments, so it's about $39,000 and change per year. That was our cost share for the stabilization. So that would be an override. That would have to stay forever. That money would get segregated, go into probably a special revenue account just to address. So this holds harmless the schools. They don't have to worry about that funding. Then you have the debt exclusion. The debt exclusion is our share of the cost for the next 30 years of the new high school. Once we get to the 30 years, that falls off, but the override stays forever.
And how does, I'm sorry for the dense question.
No. These are
The override covers the cost of the students attending, right? But what's the mechanism that's paying for 30 years for, is that just gets rolled up into town budget? Into the annual town budget?
So similar to how we're financing the high school.
Yep.
So it's going to be an addition on top of the levy. So
Okay.
when the high school, for example, when the high school, we're finished paying for the high school, and I believe we financed that for 20 years. When that debt exclusion falls off, there's going to be a drop in what people see on their tax bills.
How much? I mean, I
Roughly, I think the debt service on principal-wise is, I think, 1.2 million on principal, because we have a few things rolled up into debt exclusion. But we're going to see a drop because that debt exclusion for the town is going to roll off. But if we add the South Shore Regional VOTEC, it will be there for a fixed number of years. And then as soon as that's paid off, then there'll be a drop on the tax bill. It's not part of the 2.5% levy. This is above the 2.5% levy.
when does the high school get completed as far as payments? When does that get finished, paid for?
Another 8 or 9 years.
I want to say, I think 2034, 2035 is when, because there's two phases of debt service for the building of the high school.
Okay. And then this one starts in
2029.
2029. Okay, so about 5 years before.
So there's going to be a few years where there's going to be overlap.
Double.
But we're going to see some of the town's debt exclusion that's currently in play for some of the new buildings, the police station, the high school, some of the other schools. That's going to start to trail off.
Okay.
So So the override is forever. What happens after, you said it's there forever, but even, like the other falls off. So the override will pay for enrollment, but will it'll be a fixed amount forever, regardless of enrollment and operational costs, right?
So that's why we feel it would be good to set up a stabilization fund, so that way South Shore, those funds, there's a special revenue fund set aside just to account for those funds, and it doesn't go towards the town. It's really, at this point, a shared cost. It's not going towards the town's general fund budget, operational budget. It's really more of a fixed cost at this point. And the override would be in play, so if in fact there is an increase, because South Shore Regional VOTEC is going to have needs, their capital needs are going to be factored into the increases in whatever fees they're going to propose for their upcoming budgets. When that override is applied, there is the 2.5%, Prop 2.5%. So that 2.5% would move and would cover any additional costs that would be anticipated going forward. With the override, we can handle it one of two ways. We can have an override that is an annual, it's a flat $2.5 million override, or we can phase it in. We can do it over a multi-year phase.
Thank you.
The alternative to the override is to find $2.5 million a year of
Correct.
cost reductions,
Correct.
and that would offset the need for an override.
Correct.
So going full circle here, all the way back to the beginning in my first question, the budget that's submitted as part of Article 3 doesn't include this known cost.
That is correct. So we've, from the beginning, said that we would pay that $750,000 and change out of free cash in the fall. And if the debt exclusion, Mr. Chairman, to your point, if in fact we put the debt exclusion on next year and the town voters decide that that's not something that they can afford, then you're 100% correct. Those costs would have to be separated across, cut out of all departments to cover that cost, because part of joining the South Shore Regional Technical Vocational, the moment we joined, we incurred all of those costs, both the operational cost and the cost for the new high school.
So even though, sorry, I was just going to ask another question. If we know that it's going to be a recurring cost and we're looking at free cash to pay for it, I guess maybe this is a question for Mr. Galvin, but is it, I guess I'm still not sure, is it still a balanced budget?
In terms of it being a balanced budget, so what's going to be presented at the April town meeting is balanced in that whatever appropriations are there, there's a funding source to offset that appropriation. And then if we went, but it doesn't include the South Shore Regional VOTEC. If it goes to the fall, then the offset would be free cash. So however you cut it, there would be an offset for that South Shore Regional VOTEC. And whether it was in the spring or whether it was in the fall, either way, it was probably going to be funded with free cash, just because this is a larger item to absorb and a tax, within the tax levy each year. And we did still need to talk about how is it going to be handled. Most towns treat the regional assessment as a shared cost and not within the school budget.
Are there other items out there that
No.
fall into this same bucket?
Where
we know there's an expense coming up, but we're not accounting for it in the budget?
from a budgetary standpoint, no.
How do you know?
With the knowledge that we have right now, anything can happen from here until the fall, but with the knowledge that we have right now, no.
So,
Question on the free cash balance, just assuming all the articles in here are related to free cash pass, with the 750,000, what does that leave us with after that?
So the 700,000 would be from the recertified free cash in the fall, so it wouldn't be from the balance that we're currently dealing with.
Okay.
so hoping for an override is just a poor management strategy. what are the select board members and the town administrator doing to manage the town in the event that when we go for an override for this, it doesn't pass? Because that seems like it'd be devastating.
That is, it would be, we'd have to make those cuts, unfortunately.
So
We'd
we're
have to
going
make
with
those.
zero-based budgeting, Mike?
Yes. And it would be very, I can tell you, it would be very, very painful. Coupled with, not only do we have the operational cost through an override, a debt exclusion is just like it, other than the debt exclusion stays on only until it's paid. And if that failed, it would be devastating.
Any other questions?
I didn't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but that's the reality, unfortunately.
Any other questions on any other articles that we wanted to bring up this evening? Go ahead.
General question. We shared text messages. Is there a list that, with articles that are assigned to people that when town meeting comes up, they're going to get up and say the advisory board recommends X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, there is. So right before.
Is my name on any of those? That's-
No, no. No, you and
want
Chris.
Not really.
It's all right here for you.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, so you and Chris, because of the timing and when you joined, we had already had them.
We'll be right behind you.
No, I'm sure you will. I appreciate it, thank you. Yeah, so what I'm thinking of in terms of process, right, is that we have next Thursday's meeting, and then we're discussing scheduling a meeting for the following week, and then that would be it. Then it's town meeting, and that's that. Next meeting, April 17th, which is not this upcoming Thursday, but the following Thursday. We have Kevin Cantwell from the CPC joining us. We're going to ask for Mr. Miller, Tom Miller from School District to join us. And then what we should be able to do at that meeting as well, what I'd ask my fellow board members to do is to please make sure that you come ready to discuss your respective articles, because I would say that at that point, we shouldn't try to make it another marathon session, right, if we can prevent it, but let's try to get through as many articles next week as we can in terms of taking a vote as a board, and figuring out where folks stand in terms of making a recommendation for or against each one of these articles.
Sounds good.
Great.
I did have a question on Article 4, though.
Article 4? Sure. Go for it. This is Article 4 in which one? Special or annual?
Special.
Special?
It's all the list of, no, I'm sorry, town meeting.
Annual town meeting? So that's the,
I'm not sure if,
that's the enterprise funds.
yeah, I don't know if the panel can answer. I was just curious, I brought this up when I looked at two things on the school. It seems like that's a typo on the special education 8-passenger vans for $133,000. I kind of read that as 8-passenger vans.
Yeah, I did too.
But it's
Oh,
a
it's an
single
8-passenger van.
8-passenger. Oh, right. And does that need to be rescribed? What was that term we all learned last?
Scribner's error.
And I made a Scribner's error because I said that this article is in reference to the enterprise funds, which is, this is a submission from the Capital Budget Committee, so my apologies.
I didn't know we had to do the scribe on that. And the only other part I had, I think maybe you guys can answer is it typically that we spread the cost of a new vehicle over, I see like replacing car one, $20,000 into several different, wastewater, highway, solid waste.
It's not unusual to split the costs, especially when the vehicle is shared interdepartmentally. So for example, if we have a vehicle that's being used by, let's say, an individual who's doing work for, like an engineer, the town engineer is doing work for the three enterprises as well as projects for the general fund. It's not unusual to have their expenses allocated across 4 funds.
Okay. It just seems a little misleading to me, to spread it out, an $80,000 purchase. Rather, if we're buying 4 vehicles,
But just keep in mind that town meeting is voting, and each one of those funds are separate. So might be confusing if we say 80,000 across 4 funds, whereas we are designating specifically, and it's not always a 25% share. It could be a 33, a 30. It could, just depending on the allocation between the funds. So it's not always clearly spelled out as a equal divide between all 4 funds.
so if at town meeting, one of these line items is called into question and denied on one $20,000 item out of four, does that throw that whole project off?
That is correct. It could.
Absolutely.
And what do we do about that?
They have to bring it back. Well, if it doesn't happen, they can bring it back to the next town meeting.
Okay.
Can't hear you.
Oh. If it's denied, then they can bring it back to, for another town meeting, but at that point, unless they have an additional way to fund it, they're gonna.
So they take the rest of the $80,000, if it's.
Well, say 60 is approved and 20 isn't.
Right, so that
That kills the whole thing.
it kills the whole thing, so the whole $80,000 comes back, could come back at the next.
Could come back.
Okay. Or.
Correct.
Or,
So you say like one of the funds, it's approved, and then like you get to the second one and it's not. I think you might want to go back to that first one and say like to rescind the vote because you can't do anything. Like once town meeting appropriates something, it's appropriated. So if you can't buy the whole vehicle,
Right.
probably go back and revisit the vote.
and so it may be that money, that the whole thing gets, okay.
Yeah.
And then that money goes back into, or that,
It'll just stay in the retained
it'll
earnings.
stay in the retained earnings. Okay.
Mhm.
Right, thank
So
you.
is this a best practice?
Well, the reason why it's done this way is because we have the indirect costs, and those are for the costs that reside in the general fund that you can't quite put your finger on. Like, you can't identify it distinctly. It's not a distinct expense. But for something like this, where it's spread between the different departments, you can identify that it's, you can identify that it's a cost of that enterprise fund.
So you couldn't have one line item and then broken up within that?
I mean, you could. It's actually, you could actually do it either way, because you could also appropriate it in the general fund and then vote a transfer to reimburse the general fund, or it could be incorporated into the indirect costs. But that would be, the indirect costs are usually consistent from year to year,
Mhm.
and the vehicle allocations won't be consistent from year to year.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I'd like to make a motion to end our meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.